welcome my panel actually onto the stage as well. So that is Simon Johnson, Alex Matthews, Tom Skaith, and Joe Winchester. Now, as Andrew said, my name's Peter Martin. My background's in pubs, bars, restaurants. In fact, I run a business called Peach 2020. I'm co-founder and executive director of that. And what we do is basically a community and network for the people who run pub, bars, restaurant, and cafe and fast food groups. So that I do have an interest in the property market, obviously, because that sector follows what's happening in the property market very closely, because it needs to be where people are. So that is a certain amount of relevance why I'm chairing this session this afternoon, which is supposed to be, as Andrew said, a bit of fun. But obviously there is a serious angle to it, because it's about investing money, a bit like the last session. So really, to tell you what we're going to do is we've got our 4 experts here, and each of them are going to be given 5 minutes, and just 5 minutes, well, perhaps a bit over, but not too much. 5 minutes to make their pitch for their case for investing in their specialist areas. Which has the best blend of return relative to risk, volatility, liquidity, which offers the best growth prospects, the best exiting opportunities. You get the picture. So it really is, the bottom line is, you know, if you had any money, where would you put it? In fact, we're going to go in this order. So first of all, I'll introduce again our panel and then ask them to come to the lectern and make their pitch. So going first will be Simon Johnson of CBRE, who's going to make the case for hospitality, but in particular the pub sector. Then we have Joe Winchester who's going to come up to the lectern. She's real estate consultant with Gerald Eve, and she's making the case for co-living. Alex Matthews, head of build to rent at Harris Associates. Yes, you've guessed it, he's making the case for build to rent. And then last but by no means least, we've got Tom Skaith, partner head of senior living at Knight Frank. And yes, senior living is his pitch. So those are the areas we're going to be hearing. And then at the end, I'm going to open up for any questions for you, and possibly a chance for these guys to actually cross-examine each other as well. And then we'll put it to a vote. Very high-tech vote. It's going to be a show of hands. So, first and foremost, Simon Johnson to the lectern, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Really, basically, who doesn't want to own a pub, basically? Sportsmen own a pub there. We've got Bobby Moore there, who famously owned a pub. You've got Stuart Broad there, the cricketer. You've got actors and celebrities. Sir Ian McKellen there, famously owns the Grapes in Limehouse. You've got James May over there, and even the King. And you can see his wife there, Barbara Windsor, behind the bar. But why does everyone want to own a pub? Well, it's not because it's free alcohol on tap. If you want that, become an MP. Or Peter Martin. Secondly, it's not because you're a people person, or not because you want to give something back to the community, because if you want to do that, go and do Meals on Wheels. It's because you want a stable income that's real estate backed that will stand the test of time. Yes, of course, the amount of beer sold in licensed premises is declining, but pubs aren't all beer anymore. In fact, recent statistics suggest that young people drink far less than they should at their age, and people and brewers are responding to this trend. Why else do you think Carlsberg is keen to get its hands on Britvic? Yes, of course, the number of pubs in Great Britain has been falling for many years, and it's continued to do so post-COVID. But these are unviable pubs run by dodgy geezers in teetotal villages, and they're simply not up to the job. But those pubs that are left are bigger, they're better, they're broad-based, they're building businesses day by day. And we're seeing some signs of resilience. And in fact, these pubs have been resilient for 200 years in many cases. And even, whisper it quietly, some steady, considered, non-flashy growth. Consumer confidence is on the up. The sun is shining. England are still in the Euros. Now, clearly, on that basis, you should sell every pub you have in Scotland and never really have invested in Wales or Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. But aside from these important emotional reasons, there are some genuine and compelling economic reasons. Pub trading has recovered from COVID. It trades well in a downturn, And it outperforms restaurants, outperforms bars, it outperforms nightclubs. And that performance hasn't just been in the south, the soft south, if you want to call it that. The Midlands and the north are showing resilience, certainly for the last 6 months, matching in the northern powerhouse the blue wall. They've kept pace with each other. Specifically, though, there are 3 great reasons why you should buy pubs today. Firstly, this is a flexible investment. There are 3 ways that people who own pubs get their returns from them. Firstly, the owner sets up a lease with an established operator and simply collects the rent month by month. That's a simple real estate yield. Secondly, the owner operates the pub themselves, taking on all the costs and the risks, but also keeping all the rewards and the cash flow. And this is what the big brands tend to do. And then thirdly, the owner has a third party that operates the pub, but has some part in the risks, the rewards, and the returns of the operation, most typically through a tenant. And as we know, a tenant is commonly known as a landlord, confusingly. And the joy of this is that you get to choose which model best suits your pub to give you the maximum returns. Outside of hotels, which has so many layers of complexity and people to pay, we heard from Wyndham, and they've got the franchise, then you've got an operator, then you've got a brand manager, then you've got an owner, and so on. I can think of no operational real estate model which has such a flexible model that can be so easily implemented. It's the ultimate flexible investment. Secondly, in addition to a strong and flexible cash flow, you do get asset appreciation. Back in the 19th century, many brewers wanted to control the outlets that sold their products. And so with the beer cash flow, they built themselves large numbers of pubs. And much to their delight, not only did it mean they had a guaranteed outlet for their beer, but they also received rent and had a property portfolio that appreciated in value. The fact is that pubs' values mirror national real estate values as a bricks and mortar investment. Here's a picture of yields. And you can see, with a mixture of pubs in London and pubs in the provinces, you can pretty much match the broad UK property market. So along with good regular cash flow, you get asset appreciation. But I know what you're going to ask. You're going to say, isn't it a rather complicated hedge for something that we have to run as well as own it? Well, thirdly, pubs also give you business value appreciation as well. It's clear that there's been a concentration in both the ownership and the operation of pubs in the last couple of decades. Whilst the 1989 beer orders looked to dismantle the stronghold that the big 6 brewers had on the UK pub market, this had, at that time, a significant impact, negative impact, on the short-term value of those pubs. But lo and behold, 34 years later, the concentration has been rebuilt with the big companies owning or operating better pubs than ever. We've been tracking the performance and the trading multiples of pub transactions for over a decade. And there's the evidence here to see. This is a genuine chart, and I promise you genuine, straight out of my database. I haven't invented it just for this talk. And around 2010, when a significant number of pub portfolios changed hands, they were getting around 7.6 times EBITDA for their assets. By 2023, this has risen to over 8.3 times unit EBITDA. As scarcity and as better business performance and the quality of assets has risen. So 3 good reasons to invest in pubs. Why wouldn't you want to own a pub? You get a flexible investment with multiple income streams, and I haven't even begun to talk about pubs as rooms, there's not time. Secondly, in addition to a yield, you get real estate capital appreciation. And thirdly, the icing on the cake, you get the business value appreciation as well as the industry consolidates. Be quick, and as they say in pubs, now is the time, gentlemen, please.
Thank you, Simon. Not bad on the timing. Very good. So, Jo.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, why invest in co-living? First of all, what is co-living? Co-living is a modern managed rental product aimed at single renters and couples without children. It's a kind of BTR for single people, you might say. And a typical co-living building is a living environment consisting of small studio units, small private studio units, which residents can occupy, together with the use of extensive communal facilities, which they also have the use of, which might typically be a gym, lounge areas, possibly a bar, a cinema, yoga spaces, and this, you get the picture. So this is a very attractive living environment, and it's proving very popular with single professionals and students and couples without children, for example. And it offers benefits to residents based on an all-inclusive rent, and also more flexibility in terms of lease lengths and so on for the convenience of residents. It's not difficult to see why it's popular. So who lives in a co-living building? A few months ago, Gerald Eve did a operator survey designed to collect some data on who lives in co-living schemes. We found that the average age of a co-living resident is 28. Around 46% of residents are from overseas. Up to 17% can be couples, and actually anything between 0 and almost 100% can be students. And actually our survey found that the average salary was around £37,500, although actually the range is much broader than that, and it can be 0, which would be students, and up to £100,000. So it's really a very broad church and can be appealing to a very large number of residents. Just to go through why this is the investment case for co-living is so compelling, just to look at the statistics for those groups in London. There are 4.25 million people in London who are of unmarried status. That means that they have either never been married, are divorced, separated, and so on. Around 41% of the population were born overseas. 370,000 students in London served by only 100,000 bed spaces of purpose-built student accommodation. I don't need to rehearse the general scenario where people are renting for longer because it's much more difficult to buy, but the average age of the first-time buyer in London is 34, and on average you need to save a deposit of £125,000 in order to buy a flat, and not surprisingly people are renting for longer as a result of that. And I would also say that between 10 and 20% of households in London are couples without children, and actually a significant proportion of residents in co-living are actually couples as well, obviously in the slightly larger units, but economically it makes complete sense for couples. What does all this add up to? We estimate that there is a potential demand pool for co-living in London of around 600,000 people who could have a potential requirement from one of the groups that I've outlined, and that potentially earn enough to pay for a co-living type rent. There are currently only around 5,000 operational co-living beds. It's a very nascent market, but I think that is a very compelling demand case. And the reason to invest in co-living is simply that there is huge need for more accommodation that more closely fits the needs of young professionals and couples without children. It doesn't have to be a form of accommodation that you live in forever, but it meets a need. And I would like to say that it also frees up more traditional forms of accommodation by creating capacity in the housing market for people that need a small private unit of accommodation. It actually frees up more traditional forms of accommodation. This is an argument that has long been used of the student housing market, and it equally applies to co-living. I just want to say that what I've been saying about the demand is underpinned by some letting insights from recent scheme openings, and these are 4 examples of 4 schemes which have opened over the last year or 18 months and have shown letting velocities of up to 30 lettings a week. When these schemes come to the market, they let very readily, and if they're marketed cleverly, they fly out of the door. And finally, just to talk about yield trends in the living sectors. And what this slightly complicated chart shows is that in the 5 years since there has really been a liquid market in co-living, the yields at which co-living was being committed 5 years ago were at around 4.75%, and those have slowly been coming in to about around 4.5%. 5 years ago, when co-living was beginning to be traded, yields in BTR were much keener and sub 4% yields. And in student accommodation, it went down to 3.6% at the lowest point. And what's been happening is that those yields slowly have been moving out. And what we've seen is a convergence between co-living and the other more established living sectors. And I think that shows growing investor confidence in this market. But it also means that, relatively speaking, some of the other markets have had to move out in response to the economic climate as well. I hope I've presented the case effectively for co-living.
We'll soon find out, Jo, because we'll put it to the vote. Thank you very much. So, Alex next.
So, build to rent. What is build to rent? I mean, I think it's becoming a broader kind of concept now, but it's effectively residential properties built for rental purposes, usually by institutional investors. It falls within the wider umbrella of PRS, of which buy-to-let still forms a significant majority of that sector. Build to rent is also split into multifamily and single family. Obviously, single family over the last couple of years has had a real kind of moment in the sun. Multifamily has fallen back a little bit, but we're viewing it as a kind of in the last kind of couple of months, it's very much kind of come to the fore again. Why does BTR stand out? I think the supply and demand fundamentals are always there, and they're well known by everyone now. It's, there's not enough houses, and the people that, the houses that we do build, people can't afford to buy themselves, so we need to find different ways to house people. ESG credentials are really, really strong. You've got, both from an environmental point of view, the management of the buildings and their energy efficiency means that you can save on the OPEX. But I think, secondly, as well, from a social point of view, really kind of focusing in on improving that lived experience is effectively improving on the, sorry, I'm losing myself here. The ESG credentials from the social side of things, if you improve the focus of the, I'll move on to the next point. Anyway, it presents stable, secure income cash flows as well, improving occupancy rates. More recent trends, so just looking at the BTR transaction volumes that have occurred within 2023, the UK, the USA and Canada actually make up around 80% of the investment within that year. And then new entrants, again, it's a similar kind of level. So predominantly it's a UK, USA focused sector. I think two things that really stand out there is that currently right now there's no Middle Eastern capital on board there, and there's also no APAC capital. So whilst there's obviously been really, really strong investment volumes within the sector thus far, there's still so much more global capital out there which can basically be accessed through the UK. If you look at the US multifamily model, which is much more mature, they've had significant volumes of investment from very much of a kind of global kind of geography recently. Looking forward, I think the key thing looking forward here is that we've already seen why the assets have performed really well, but there's a real asset and opinion diversification occurring at the minute. So previously, where you had your M&Gs and your L&Gs kind of focusing in on delivering that generation 1, that generation 2 build to rent, which was low yielding, pretty safe, pretty secure. What we're seeing now is that there's other companies coming out there and different funds who are kind of going through a slightly different focus, and you could be a lot of kind of asset strategies are focusing on London nodes, London transport nodes, and going on amenity light, OPEX light strategies. So I think it's quite healthy that previously where we had assets where everyone was kind of going for the same thing, it's now broadening out a little bit, and we've got investors having different opinions on what's really important for build to rent. Hospitality expertise is really influencing the operations side of things. I think, look, we're learning more and more on a daily basis about, we still lack so much data within build to rent, and it's such a young sector. Managing that data that does come in, managing how we can really improve operational efficiencies is definitely becoming more to the forefront in the sectors, and we're really starting to understand now, how do we improve those operational efficiencies to drive returns. I think refurbing of Generation 1 and 2 build-to-rent kit, again, that's been something which over the last 6 months is really coming to the fore. Previously, you're looking at kind of relatively low IRRs, or at least middle IRRs for investors on both the levered and unlevered basis. But, if you're looking at refurbing Generation 1 and Generation 2 kit, then if you look at models like what Cortland have done with the multifamily side of things in the US, then you're looking at 2 times equity multiples, 20+% IRRs over quite short periods of time. So that's really opening it up to different ranges of investors. And then I think the final thing is, traditionally we always struggle against, or there's always been a factor of what is the discount of build to rent against private sale values. There's been a real convergence, I'd say, particularly in certain areas around London, and speaking to developers on a regular basis, such as Taylor Wimpey and Barclay have been mentioned earlier, who sold 370 units last year, that ultimately, if you factor in cost of sales, if you factor in the risk attached to trying to get things out on a private sale basis, if you're now sitting at a 7 or 8% discount or 9% discount, which is lower than it has been historically for a build-to-rent investment value, then it's proving to be quite a persuasive investment case for these house builders. And there's a lot of activity in the kind of zones 3, 4, 5 of London currently within that space. So just finally focusing on kind of the the key takeaways here are the rapidly expanding but beginnings, of truly diversifying this sector. This gives greater flexibility for incoming investors with a broad menu of investing options. So, we're really broadening out the return profiles of different investors. Just looking forward, and I appreciate I'm probably falling a bit behind.
I think you're about on time.
About on time, perfect. Okay, so
well, if you finish now.
I'll give me 30 seconds. Just really quickly covering these points then. So first of all, I think lower cost of debt is really, really important for us coming forward. Build-to-rent is traditionally a low-yielding asset class. It's obviously important for all things, but it's more effective here. Streamlining the planning process, further master plan diversification. We need a lot of master plans going forward. This is a really good strategy for, and I think it was mentioned earlier in the talk previously. Better government support, recognition, and recognition. Better data and technology is also required for the emerging side of things. Finally, just looking at scalability, we're at 3% of where, if you look at the graph here, number of PRS households, we're significantly behind Germany and USA. So we're at roughly 5 million PRS households, and 3% of that is owned by institutional investors. If you look at the German model, then 37% is owned by institutional investment. So I think that really shows just how far we've got to go in the sector.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
No, well done. Thank you, Alex. Great flexibility there. Last but no means least, Tom.
Hey everyone, I've just got 3 slides for you. Senior living as a proposition sells hospitality and wellness services to an 80-year-old give or take customer. Operators are selling service and they're selling real estate. They're selling to a tenant that has the means to pay. In the UK, seniors' population is sitting on over £1 trillion of unmortgaged housing equity. Let's not forget, it's those seniors that are supporting their children who are buying the pints and paying the rent in co-living and paying the rent in BTR if the average age is 30. We've seen increased investment in recent years, which means there's higher quality real estate being managed by more experienced operators. But we're coming from a lower base. Senior living in Europe is later than other parts of living to institutionalise. There's therefore more headroom, more room for growth. In today's system, the current housing stock isn't suitable for later life, and seniors are no longer guaranteed a good service from their healthcare system or their social care system. Therefore, unfortunately, you're needing to use your own resources to live a good later life or to pay for care. Senior living provides a financial mechanism for right-sizing, selling the family home and releasing equity to live in later life. It gives the ability to live independently for longer, with access to services and care. It enables customers to avoid the care home, a place where no one aspires to end up. These factors combine to create demand for the product. The investment case, well, it's pretty simple. In Western Europe, we've got an aging population. In the UK, the 65 and above are going to increase by a massive 40% over the next 25 years. During this time, the working age population, the customers in the pubs, co-living and BTR, is barely going to change. In the UK, that population is only going to change by an increase of 0.7% over the same time period. We live in a world where the taxable cohort is decreasing, and we're all living longer, healthier lives. AI is going to magnify this even further. We have low penetration rates. In the UK, it stands at about 0.6%, below, say, 6% in more mature markets. So there's plenty of headroom, plenty of room for growth. Senior living provides stable, inflation-linked cash flows, making it resilient during economic downturns, and a smart inflation hedge, exactly the same as we've heard from co-living and BTR. However, in addition to those sectors, with good management, looking after tenants and servicing their needs, the tenants in senior living don't leave. The income is therefore very sticky, and they manage very low voids. From development, investors can access value-add returns, which is where the action's going to be over the next couple of years as rates and financing and pricing continue to adjust. And once built, you sell the assets on into lower cost of capital. Yields in most European markets sit outside of BTR at present. It's a newer product, the same as co-living, except in the medium term, with the quality of the cash flows of senior living, this yield position just doesn't make sense. We're forecasting that in the European market, we'll follow a similar trajectory to North America, where they've now built 2 million of these senior living apartments. And in the best markets, stabilised yields sit just above multifamily. And my last point on this slide is there's a weight of money allocated for investment. The data on this slide on the right is a recent survey of investors. 51 investors, 67 billion under management across Europe, 25% of them are currently invested in senior living. And they're telling us that's going to increase to 50% within the next 5 years. So as we know, you investors don't like to miss out on the next big thing. So maybe today you're going to vote senior living and not these other sectors. So my last slide. Senior living is similar real estate to the rest of living, except there's one big difference. It's in the operations. The services a customer receives and that living in a communal environment will extend your life. Just think about that for a moment. If you fall over, for example, you'll be picked up off the floor. You will receive a better diet, better health, better well-being. You'll live in a community of like-minded individuals. You will negate loneliness. Don't take my word for it. Jamie's platform, Inspired Villages, they've proved as a customer, if you move in, you live with them for 1 year, they could extend your life for up to 9 years. The data proves it. So you're being asked where to invest today. I think the answer is pretty simple. You invest in a pension fund that owns the real estate that one day you may need to live in later life. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Well, that was an emotional pitch, certainly for someone of my age as well, so there we go. I am very conscious of the fact, a man of the pub industry, there's a bar out there. So what we're going to do, I think we'll leave it at that, actually. But, so, let's sum up. Well, from my point of view, yeah, I love pubs. So that's always attractive. And as I said, I'm getting close to retirement's not a word, but certainly the age is catching up with me. But actually, bearing in mind the housing challenges of this country, Co-living and build-to-rent are very attractive as well, so I don't know. Right, quick one, hands up. Who, with their own money, or someone they can nudge or borrow from, who would vote for investing in pubs? Let's have a quick show of hands, please. No, you just want to go to them. Fair enough. 2, okay, let's go for co-living. Who's going to invest in co-living? Well, we've got a couple up there. Good. 3, good. But there's a few. Okay, build-to-rent. Oh, that's slightly in the... And the last one, yeah, aged.
Winner.
Okay, last question. Is there anybody, put your hand up if you are one of those people who are never going to put your hand up, no matter what I ask. I know the type. Yeah, I'm like that. I think it's the age. They're definitely, well done, Tom. Your pitch won. So that probably means the drinks are on Tom next time round. Ladies and gentlemen, my panel, thank you for entertaining us at the end of the day. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much.